Imagine this. You wake up staring at the ceiling, a crushing weight pressing against your chest. It's not physical, but it might as well be. That hollow, sinking feeling, the kind that makes the air feel heavier, the room feel smaller. It's familiar, too familiar. You've been here before, many times. Maybe it's the sting of another failed relationship, the bitter aftertaste of broken trust. Maybe it's the shame of watching your bank account drain again, despite all the promises you made to yourself. Or perhaps it's the frustration of falling back into the same self-destructive habits, the ones you swore you'd outgrown. No matter the details, the pattern is undeniable. You are trapped. An invisible loop pulling you back to the same choices, the same mistakes, the same regrets. Like some unseen force has a script for your life and you're just acting it out. And yet, you tell yourself you've learned, you reflect, you analyze, you make vows to change. But then, the moment comes, and instead of breaking the cycle, you repeat it. Why? Why do you keep chasing the same type of person who only brings you pain? Why do you sabotage your own success when it's within reach? Why do you let fear dictate your choices, even when you know better? And the most unsettling question of all, if you could go back in time, armed with everything you know now, would you actually make a different choice? Or would you find yourself walking the same path, rationalizing the same decisions, falling into the same trap, over and over again? Carl Jung had an answer for this. According to Jung, your life is not as free as you think. The choices you make, the emotions you feel, the people you attract, they are not entirely your own. They are echoes of the past, whispers from the unconscious, fragments of wounds you never healed. Jung believed that until you bring the unconscious into the light, it will control your life, and you will call it fate. Let that sink in. The struggles you face are not coincidences. They are not bad luck. They are reflections of the past, of traumas buried, of fears ignored, of beliefs inherited, but never questioned. You are not just repeating mistakes. You are reliving them, acting out a script you never wrote, but one you unknowingly accepted. And it gets worse, because the unconscious doesn't speak in words. It speaks in repetition. If you refuse to learn the lesson, it won't simply disappear. It will return, disguised as a new lover, a new job, a new opportunity. But underneath, it's the same heartbreak, the same betrayals, the same self-doubt, the same test. So now, the real question is this. How do you escape a cycle you don't even realize you're trapped in? The answer isn't willpower, it isn't wishful thinking, and it sure as hell isn't about making empty resolutions. It requires something far deeper, something most people spend their whole lives avoiding. In the next section, we will uncover the hidden force that keeps you stuck, the part of yourself lurking in the shadows, ensuring you never truly break free. Because until you confront the real source of your suffering, you will remain its prisoner. So tell me, are you ready to see the truth? The unseen consequences. The trap. You don't even know you're in. Think back to the last time you told yourself, this time will be different. Maybe it was after another shattered relationship, another missed opportunity, another moment where life slipped through your fingers. You made a promise, swore you had learned, convinced yourself you would never fall for the same illusion, never repeat the same mistake. And yet, here you are. The cycle repeats like a ghost haunting your steps. And if you pay close attention, you'll notice something far more terrifying. This cycle is not just personal, it's everywhere. Nations repeat the mistakes of their ancestors, waging wars under new banners, but for the same old reasons. People chase happiness in the same empty places, generation after generation. Entire civilizations fall into the same self-destructive loops, blindly convinced they are different from those who came before. Why? The hidden force controlling your life. You are not who you think you are. This isn't a metaphor. This is a psychological fact. The person you present to the world, the rational, composed, decision-making you, is nothing more than the surface of an ocean. Beneath it, in the dark and unseen depths, lies something far more powerful, the unconscious. Carl Jung spent his life unraveling this hidden force, and what he discovered was unsettling. Your unconscious is not just a dusty storage room of forgotten memories. It is the silent architect of your entire existence. It shapes your fears, your desires, your relationships, even your failures. And the worst part, it does all of this without your permission. The childhood blueprint, how you became who you are. Think back to when you were a child. At that stage, you were pure potential, raw, open, unshaped by the world. But then, something happened. You started to learn what was acceptable and what wasn't. You discovered which parts of yourself earned love and approval, and which parts brought rejection, shame, or punishment. So you adapted. You learned to hide your anger because good children don't get angry. You buried your sadness because strong people don't cry. You silenced your desires, your instincts, your fears, anything that might make you unacceptable in the eyes of others. But here's the thing, the parts of yourself that you hide don't disappear. They don't cease to exist just because you refuse to acknowledge them. Instead, they sink into the shadows of your unconscious, waiting. Jung called this the shadow. Your shadow is made up of everything you have disowned, rejected, or suppressed about yourself. But despite your best efforts to keep it buried, it does not stay buried. Instead, it begins to control your life from behind the scenes. The war within. Why you keep making the same mistakes. Have you ever wondered why you keep attracting toxic relationships no matter how hard you try to avoid them? Why you sabotage yourself just before success? Why you fall back into the same destructive habits, even when you know they're ruining you? It's not bad luck. It's not fate. It's your unconscious at war with your conscious mind. Jung made a chilling observation. Whatever you suppress, whatever you refuse to acknowledge, will control you from the shadows. If you deny your anger, it will not vanish. It will twist itself into passive aggression, sudden outbursts, or an unconscious attraction to people who mistreat you. If you suppress your need for love, you may push away those who care about you, convincing yourself you don't need them, when deep down, you're starving for connection. This is why you keep making the same mistakes. You are not acting from free will. You are acting from old wounds. You are reliving childhood patterns. You are repeating past pains. You are caught in the same psychological loops, not because you want to, but because your unconscious is forcing you to face what you refuse to see, and it will not stop until you do. Why your unconscious won't let you go? There is a reason for this. Your unconscious is not your enemy. It does not care about your comfort. It does not care about your fleeting happiness. It has only one goal: wholeness. Even if that means dragging you through suffering, even if that means making you endure the same heartbreak, the same failures, the same betrayals, again and again, until you finally wake up. Jung called this process individuation, the journey of bringing the unconscious into the light. Because until you do, you are nothing more than a puppet. A puppet pulled by unseen hands, repeating the same mistakes, trapped in the same cycles. How do you break free? The first step is the hardest. You must confront the parts of yourself you have spent your entire life running from. Because what is unconscious does not disappear. It simply finds new disguises. How your unconscious shapes reality. Carl Jung gave us a warning. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. But what does this really mean? Picture a man who grew up in a home where love was conditional, where affection had to be earned through achievement. He learns that his worth is measured by success. So he spends his life chasing status, wealth, and validation. But no matter what he accomplishes, it's never enough. The emptiness remains. Why? Because his unconscious does not crave success. It craves healing. And until he confronts the wound, he will keep chasing a hollow version of happiness that will never satisfy him. Now, imagine a woman who, as a child, learned that vulnerability leads to pain. Maybe she was abandoned. Maybe she was humiliated. She builds walls, convincing herself she doesn't need anyone. The moment someone gets too close, she pushes them away, retreating into isolation, again and again, not because she wants to be alone, but because her unconscious is recreating the very pain she never healed. This is the hidden consequence of ignoring the unconscious. It does not disappear. It controls you in ways you cannot see, shaping your desires, fears, relationships, even your reality itself. The hidden force that controls your relationships. Have you ever noticed how some people attract the same kind of toxic relationships over and over? The same emotional unavailability, the same betrayals, the same destructive cycles. This is not coincidence. Jung called this projection. It's when your unconscious mind projects unhealed wounds onto the people around you. If you suppress your anger, you will see anger everywhere. If you refuse to acknowledge your weaknesses, you will resent them in others. If you never healed from abandonment, you will unconsciously attract people who abandon you. And here's the cruelest twist. The unconscious does this on purpose, not to punish you, but to force you to wake up. It will show you again and again what you refuse to confront. Until you finally break the cycle, it will keep sending you the same lesson, wrapped in different disguises. And it doesn't stop with relationships. How your mind traps you in a prison of your own. Making your thoughts are not as independent as you believe. Have you noticed how certain fears, certain doubts, certain self-criticisms seem to loop in your mind like a broken record? This is because the unconscious speaks in repetition. If, as a child, you were told you weren't good enough, your mind will keep whispering that lie, even as an adult. If you were conditioned to seek approval, you will chase validation long after the voices that programmed you have disappeared. This is how people become prisoners of their own minds. They live inside stories they did not choose. They react rather than act. They become characters in a script they never wrote, but one they repeat over and over, believing it to be reality. And that's why most people stay stuck. They believe the problem is external, the wrong job, the wrong partner, the wrong circumstances. But the real prison is inside them, the unconscious patterns that shape every choice they make, without them even realizing it. The collective shadow. Why humanity never learns. Jung didn't just see this at the individual level, he saw it playing out across entire civilizations. Just as people have a shadow, so does society. Think about history. The same power struggles, the same conflicts, the same ideologies rising and falling, convinced they are different from the ones before. But they are not different, because just like individuals, societies refuse to confront their shadow. Instead of facing their collective wounds, war, oppression, greed, fear, societies suppress them. And just like in the unconscious mind, whatever is suppressed will return in more destructive ways. Wars that were supposed to be the last war. Economic crashes that were never supposed to happen. Leaders who promise they are different, only to repeat the same mistakes. Because the unconscious does not care about words, it only speaks through action. And until the shadow is brought into the light, it will keep repeating itself. So what now? The real question is no longer why this happens. The question is, how do you break free? Because if you don't, the cycle will continue. Not just in your life, not just in your relationships, but in your mind, your reality, your world. And the truth is, most people never escape. Most people live their entire lives repeating the same loops, making the same mistakes, trapped in a story they never even realized was written for them. But you have a choice. In the next section, we will go deeper into the unseen mechanics of your mind, into the exact steps needed to break free from the unconscious traps shaping your life. Because once you see the strings pulling you, you can finally cut them. Are you ready? The rebellion. How to break free? Most people will never escape. They will spend their entire lives trapped in an endless loop, repeating the same heartbreaks, the same failures, the same regrets, each time convinced this time will be different. They will change jobs, change partners, change cities. But nothing will truly change because what needs to change is not outside of them. It's within them. But you are different. You are here because something inside you refuses to stay asleep. A voice, perhaps faint, perhaps buried, whispers that there is another way, and there is. But this path is not easy. It is not about willpower. It is not about forcing change or cutting people out of your life. No, this rebellion is far more difficult. It is a rebellion against yourself, against the illusions that have kept you blind, against the wounds that have made you weak, against the unconscious forces that have dictated your every move. And to win this war, you must enter the one place you have avoided your entire life: your own shadow. Step 1. The courage to see the first step is the hardest. Jung once said, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul." And he was right. Most people would rather scroll endlessly, binge-watch distractions, drown themselves in work, do anything, rather than sit alone with their thoughts. Why? Because truth is painful. Imagine looking into a mirror and seeing not the version of yourself you present to the world, but the one that lurks beneath, the jealous one, the bitter one, the weak one, the selfish one, the part of you that has sabotaged your own success, the part of you that has pushed away the very things you claim to want, the part of you that has made excuse after excuse, blaming everything but yourself. That is the key to your freedom. Because until you see yourself fully, without lies, without justifications, without denial, you will remain a puppet of your unconscious. So sit in silence. No phone, no distractions. Let the truth rise to the surface. Ask yourself, what painful patterns have I been repeating? What do I avoid thinking about because it makes me uncomfortable? What am I most afraid of admitting about myself? The answers will hurt. But they will also set you free, because reality, no matter how painful, is always better than illusion. Step 2. Reclaiming your shadow. Once you see your shadow, you must reclaim it. Jung believed the shadow is not just the dark side of the psyche, it is also the source of your greatest untapped power. The anger you suppress could be transformed into strength. The fear that paralyzes you could become wisdom. The desires you reject could hold the key to your true potential. But first, you must stop running from them. Think about the traits you despise in others. What irritates you? What disgusts you? What makes you angry? Arrogance? Weakness? Manipulation? What if I told you that these traits, in some form, exist within you? This is called shadow projection. The person who despises arrogance may secretly crave recognition. The one who hates weakness may be terrified of their own vulnerabilities. The one who resents liars may be lying to themselves every single day. This is why Jung said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." So instead of rejecting your shadow, study it. Instead of denying your anger, ask how it could serve you. Instead of suppressing your desires, ask why you are afraid of them. Because what you suppress controls you, but what you integrate empowers you. Step 3. Rewrite the script. And now, something terrifying happens. You realize that much of what you believe to be you was nothing more than a collection of unconscious patterns. So now, the real work begins. If your past conditioning shaped you into someone who repeats self-destructive cycles, then you must become someone new. Not by pretending, not by forcing it, but by rewriting the script that has controlled you since childhood. How? Question everything you believe about yourself. Who told you that you were not enough? Who convinced you that you had to live a certain way? Interrupt your patterns. If you always react with fear, choose courage. If you always seek approval, Sit with the discomfort of rejection. If you always sabotage yourself at the last moment, push through. Make the unconscious conscious. Every time you feel triggered, ask yourself, what part of me is reacting? Is this truly who I am? Or is this an old wound speaking? This will feel unnatural. It will feel alien. It will feel terrifying. That is a good sign. It means you are breaking free. Step 4. Die before you die. There is an ancient mystical saying, die before you die. What does it mean? It means that to be truly free, you must let the old self die, the one ruled by unconscious wounds, the one trapped in patterns not of its own making, the one who believed itself to be a victim of fate rather than the creator of its own destiny. This is not a small change. This is not self-help. This is a death and rebirth. Most will never go through it. It is far easier to stay in the cycle, to repeat the same patterns, to blame circumstances, to numb oneself with distractions. But for those who do, everything changes. You stop reacting. You stop making the same mistakes. You stop attracting the same pain. Because for the first time, you are truly awake. And when that happens, the cycle ends. The moment of truth. Most people, when they reach this point, will turn back. They will retreat into old habits, let fear pull them back into unconsciousness. But you have a choice. The next time you find yourself repeating a mistake, you will remember this. You will recognize the pattern as it happens. You will feel the pull of the old self. And in that moment, you will have power. Will you act differently? Or will you fall asleep again? This is the test. In the final section, we will uncover the ultimate truth, the most profound realization that Jung left behind. The realization that, if you understand it, will change your life forever. But be warned, once you see it, there is no unseeing it. Are you ready? The ultimate truth. The final, most powerful realization. Imagine standing at the edge of a vast abyss. Beneath you lies everything you've spent your life avoiding, your fears, your traumas, your failures, the painful memories you buried long ago. The abyss is dark, endless, terrifying. For most of your life, you have walked carefully around it, pretending it wasn't there, distracting yourself, building walls. But now, you are here. And for the first time, you are looking straight into it. Jung understood something few ever realize. The abyss is not your enemy. In fact, it holds the very key to your liberation. The things you've suppressed, the wounds you've ignored, the mistakes you keep repeating, they are not curses. They are invitations, invitations to wake up. Because here is the ultimate truth. The suffering you cannot seem to escape is not happening to you. It is happening for you. Let that sink in. The pain was always the teacher. Since the beginning, your unconscious has been trying to show you something. Every heartbreak, every failure, every cycle you swore you would never repeat, none of it was random. None of it was meaningless. It was a lesson. A pattern repeated not to punish you, but to wake you up. Think back to your greatest struggles. What if, instead of seeing them as misfortunes, you saw them as messages? The toxic relationships were teaching you to set boundaries and value yourself. The self-sabotage was forcing you to confront your fear of success, responsibility, or change. The endless search for validation was revealing a deeper wound, the belief that you are not enough on your own. Your suffering was never a prison, it was a mirror. But most people never realize this. They stay trapped, running from pain, blaming circumstances, waiting for something to change from the outside. They never understand that the power to end the cycle has always been in their hands, but now you do. And that knowledge changes everything. Fate versus free will. The final illusion. Jung believed that most people are not truly free. They believe they are making choices. They believe they are in control. But in reality, they are acting out unconscious scripts. Think about it. Why do you desire the things you desire? Why do you fear the things you fear? Why do you react the way you do? Were these choices you consciously made, or were they programmed into you? If you never question this, then your entire life is simply a repetition of your past. But the moment you see the script for what it is, you gain the power to change it. That is the difference between fate and free will. Most people let their unconscious dictate their fate, but the few who confront their shadow, who take responsibility for their own patterns, they become something rare. They become truly free. The final test: what will you choose? And so here you stand. You have two choices. You can walk away from this realization, pretend you never saw the truth. You can return to old habits, blame luck, blame circumstances, blame other people. Or you can step into the abyss. You can look into the darkest parts of yourself and see them not as enemies, but as guides. You can stop asking, "Why does this keep happening to me?" and start asking, "What is this trying to teach me?" This is the path of individuation, the path Jung spoke of, the path of those who refuse to be puppets of their unconscious, the path of those who choose to wake up. Most will never take it, but you can. And if you do, you will no longer be at the mercy of fate. You will no longer repeat the same mistakes. You will no longer be ruled by the past. Because you will have rewritten the script, you will no longer be asleep, you will be free. The choice is yours. This is the moment of truth, not in theory, not someday in the future, right now, because in the coming days you will feel it. The old patterns calling you back, the same mistakes tempting you to fall into them again. But this time, something will be different. This time, you will recognize them. You will see them for what they are, and in that moment, you will have power. The only question is, what will you do with it? Because now, you have no excuse. You have seen the truth, and once you see it, you can never go back. This is not just a video. This is a challenge. If you are brave enough to take it, then the next time life presents you with the same old patterns, make a different choice. That choice, not luck, not fate, not circumstances, will determine the future you create, because now, for the first time, it is truly in your hands.